Well, a little bit of sad news, but the sad news will make us happy because that's what this person's life was all about. Hi, everybody. Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your Members Only Right Angle. And I just wanted to do a small amount of time talking about the passing, as we record this today, of Tim Conway, who is not often spoken of in the pantheon of the great comedians of all time, but who made me laugh and you laugh and anybody who is above a certain age. You may have missed McHale's Navy, and that's okay, but you didn't miss the Carol Burnett Show, and Tim Conway on that show was absolutely amazing. I can remember being amazed at the fact that Tim Conway could make Harvey Korman laugh so hard that he simply couldn't say his lines anymore on TV, which seemed to me to be almost a supernatural thing. Nobody broke character on television in the 1970s. Just nobody did. Nobody wasn't done. And what most people don't realize is that, as with most comedies, the show that you usually got to see of Carol Burnett was the second show. They usually did two shows. The first show in front of a live audience gave them a chance to kind of stretch things out and sort of see where it would go. And then the second show was just a tiny bit more sedate. But the stuff that he was doing was just so charming. And you know I'm starting to sound like the guy who wants to get the kids off his lawn, but it was just so. It was so clean, and I mean, I don't mean clean in the sense of like not filthy. I mean clean in the sense of just like there's just a purity to it. There was nothing negative in it. Watching Tim Conway and Harvey Korman together and watching Tim Conway, I hadn't the slightest idea about his politics. I didn't care. Didn't matter. Didn't seem to matter to him either that I didn't know what his politics were. And I thought that was a wonderful thing. So, guys, I thought maybe we'd share a couple of memories and get your take on it. I do want to just play two clips because they're so classic. So the first one is for you, Steve, where Tim Conway is fishing in the toilet for a great white shark and tells the story of a tragedy that happened to him.
Yeah, we were over in Hawaii. She jumped off the front of this sailboat and tried to swim to shore. Got about 40 yards from the shore and great white hit her. She'd have made it too. She'd have made it if she hadn't been wearing her lucky ham.
That's the only time, and that, I don't know this for a fact, Steve, but I'm virtually positive that was the first show, because the one that went on the air, you can see him just barely managing to keep that smile under control. But in this take, he just plain loses it. It just looked like fun, didn't it? It just looked like a fun place to be.
It really did. I think the secret to Tim Conway's talent, his genius, if you want to call it that, I don't know anybody else who could milk so many laughs out of so little material. And I don't mean that as an insult to the writers or to the Carol Burnett Show or any of the other things he did, but he could take the simplest premise, usually with just a little an absurd hook to it, and milk it for way more laughs than that tiny little bit of material should ever have been worth. I mean, number one, okay, they're fishing in a toilet, bathtub, whatever that. Genius premise. How do you start with that? And then to end it with a line about not wearing your lucky ham. Where did that come from? Where did that line come from? There's no way a human being thought of that line, but there it was. And after Carol Burnett, he did those silly Dorf videos. Now I'm pretty sure that this is the first guy ever to make $1 million or more on on what's essentially a summer camp sketch. You remember those things. You do the things where you wear the shoes, or you got two people
put the
doing
shoes
the
on your
limbs.
knees, and he looks like he's 4 foot tall. Yeah,
and I will wager you some magnificent sum, maybe $20, that not only was this his idea to do it, but he actually owned the production company and the distribution of all of these Dorf videos, and he probably just made a fortune wearing shoes on his kneecaps. Just absolutely brilliant. Now, the thing was, Dorf was a silly summer camp sketch, but it was funny because he had this genius for milking it. And, it occurs to me, we talk about these generational lines. If you were born in 1964, earlier you were a baby boomer. If you were born in 1965 or later, you were Gen X. But it occurs to me there's this kind of subgeneration. If you were born in the 1960s, forget the boomer Gen X divide, you were old enough to be aware of just how messed up the 70s were, but not old enough to partake in them. And I think this gave those of us who were of this sort of subgeneration a certain bent enjoyment that a lot of other people either they indulged too much because they were born sooner, or they missed out on all of it because they were born later. And it occurs to me that this little subgeneration of mine, folks born in the 60s, we're the last ones who are going to appreciate Tim Conway when he was in his prime and doing this stuff for the very first time. And that's something precious, and I'm just going to take that with me the rest of my life.
That's a really interesting point, and I've thought about that myself many times. One of the many things I've pitied millennials for is the fact that because of the nature of the internet, they do not have the communal experience of sharing the pop culture, because there were 3 channels, and when Carol Burnett was on, there was 1 channel. And not only was it a subgeneration of people, but Carol Burnett was a show you would watch in the evenings with your parents and your grandparents, and everybody's on the same page and everybody's laughing the same way. Scott, Tim Conway was arguably maybe the greatest master of physical comedy. His ability, the sketch he did with Harvey Korman in the dentist chair, where he's the dentist and he keeps accidentally injecting Novocaine into his hand, into his leg, into every part of him, is just absolutely classic. Yet what is it about him? There's an innocence about him, right? I mean, there's just an absolute innocence about him, and it's pretty clear from the takes and the laughter that he's doing a lot of this stuff as improvisation, and is not so much even really doing it for the audience, although I'm sure that's what he lived for, so much as just, can I make these brilliantly funny people laugh? Because he was a fairly late addition to the cast of the show.
It's funny, as you were talking about Tim Conway and just the Carol Burnett Show in general, the word that keeps coming to my mind is generosity. There was a generosity about Carol herself, even though she was the name, above the fold, so to speak. She was the name on the marquee of the Carol Burnett Show. That show would not have been what it was without her willingness to humble herself and make this an ensemble cast where everybody in the cast was trying to make sure that everybody else looked good. And I think that's what made these kind of sketches work. It wasn't comedians or actors, sketch comics saying, look at me. It was taking that premise and saying, how much can we juice this so that everybody looks good, everybody's funny. There's a classic scene of Tim Conway falling down the stairs. And it takes
the old man.
Yeah. And it takes a minute and a half for him to fall down the stairs because he's so old and feeble. But that is something that usually the person with their name on the show doesn't want the audience
that's great
laughing
point.
at the other guy.
That's a great point.
For 90 seconds straight, But that kind of atmosphere that Carol created there. She has said, and I've seen her in recent years say, that you couldn't make a show like that anymore. Not just because of some of the comedy that they did, which just wouldn't, in our sort of PC world, wouldn't fly. The incredible amounts of money that they spent on costumes, on the orchestra, on, everything they did with excellence. And so what looks to us like a goof in front of the cameras was actually highly trained, very experienced, very generous professionals at the peak of their art form, exercising that gift in a way that brought joy to so many people. And so, I think everybody has their favorite Tim Conway moment, but I'll bet that the moments that the cast remembers, those surviving cast members, are probably generous acts behind the scenes that we didn't even get to enjoy on the screen. And he is a legend, and he passes into legend now. But the great thing is, even if you're way too young to understand what we're talking about right now, you can see a lot of Tim Conway on the internet right now. So as soon as you're done with this show, you should be going to your favorite video channel other than this one and looking for Tim Conway videos.
And we'll give you a little boost on your way here. I want to close with a scene that is clearly Tim Conway improvising. Again, this was the first time I'd ever seen people actually improvising on camera. I knew there was something going on, but you could tell that this was it. This is maybe the greatest outtake of all time. And the thing about it that I like the most is you've got Tim Conway, you've got Carol Burnett, you've got Harvey Korman, and you've got as a guest Dick Van Dyke. You've got
Vicki Lawrence is there.
I'm getting to that. You got 4 of the funniest people in the history of television on this set, just unable to look at the camera, looking away. It's a terrible and a wonderful feeling being on stage when you're laughing and having to do that turn. I've had that experience a few times. And yet, strangely enough, with the genius of Conway and Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman and Dick Van Dyke, it's actually Vicki Lawrence who gets off the ad lib of the century. And the reason we want to leave this with you is because of my favorite part of this by far is Tim Conway's reaction to being totally blown out of the water on a sketch that he just a few seconds ago absolutely owned. Tim, we had a lot of fun with you, and I know that wherever good people go, you're going to be there, and you'll probably be there at the pearly gates on your knees with your little golf club there, and if not, I'll be disappointed. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is an outtake from the Carol Burnett Show. I think it's probably the funniest outtake of all time. And Tim, God bless you, rest in peace, and you certainly earned the love of a very grateful and very good nation.
I was at this freak show one time, and I saw these Siamese elephants. They was joined at the end. Joined at the end of their trunks like that. And this trainer make them stand up on their back feet like that, and they had their trunks stretched like that. Then this little monkey had come out. Walk out there and dance a merengue right out there. I kind of felt sorry for them. They couldn't go like the other elephants when they go. All they could do is just blow and go north. One that sneezes, the other's eyes get real big.